How's everyone doing? I'd like to wish you all a good weekend and thank those of you for posting your questions and making this video possible. All right, let's get started. Did most made guys you knew in the life have a lawyer on retainer? Understandably, people would assume everyone did, but that's not the case. If a person was used to legal trouble, then obviously he had a lawyer on the ready. But most guys hope not to have a problem, and if they did, then at that time, would they retain a lawyer? When a new member is made in another state, such as Kansas City, Milwaukee, Chicago, etc., is it the same type of ceremony like the New York families have? I honestly wouldn't know. It may not be exactly the same, but I think that the ceremonies, although varying in nature, have the same message or takeaway. Do they have a similar ceremony in Italy? I would assume that the ceremonies conducted in New York are modeled after the ones that take place in Italy. Have you come across any Armenians in your time in the life? Armenian organized crime does exist, but during my time, I had no interactions with any of them. Do the New York Mafia bosses look down on bosses from other states? I don't believe so. A boss from another state is in the same position as themselves, and it's in their best interest to treat them as equals, especially when it comes to doing business. Why do you think a mafia organization never formed in Sardinia? Sardinia is an island off the coast of Italy, and although there was no native mafia on the island, there's always been gangs committing various crimes. A major one would be drug trafficking. The gangs don't operate or have the structure of the mafia in Italy or Sicily. Those mafias have been entering the island to conduct business. My guess is that Sardinia was more like a safe haven as well as a vacation spot. Were there guys during your time in life who talk tough on the phone, but in person drop the tough guy persona? I would say there's many people like that, not only in the mob, but in life in general. However, one person who does come to mind is Bubsy Castelli. Talks like a tough guy, but is a coward in person, or rather with the right person. Do you know where the term making your bones came from? I don't know where the term originated from, but years ago it would mean you either hit someone or was part of a hit team who carried out a hit. Did you ever meet any of the Vario crew? And I've been asked this question before, a few times. Nonetheless, the Vario crew was way before my time in that life. You describe members as being earners, politicians, or capable. During your time, who in the Lucchese family had all three qualities? The name that first comes off the top of my head is Mikey DeSantis, who had all three characteristics. Did you hear Vito Guzzo is set to be released next month? Do you think the Colombo family will recognize him as an inducted member, or will the ceremony have to take place again? Several viewers mentioned this and the possibility that he'll be released soon. The Colombo family inducted him, and even though it was done in a prison bathroom, I'm sure they recognize him as a member. If a member's assigned a new crew, does he take his associates with him? And if he had business or deals with members of his old crew, do they stay intact? If a member's moved to another crew, his associates are with him, and everything would remain the same. Any deals or business he had with members of his old crew also wouldn't change. In a previous video, you mentioned that Joe Cafe tried to get you into his crew. Did Dom Trusello ever try a similar move? And if you've been able to do so, would you have joined him? Yes, I've spoken about Joe Cafe wanting me in his crew, and it actually backfired, as Big John, my captain at the time, refused to release me. Dom was supposed to be placed in an acting consigliere position and wanted me to be the acting captain of his crew. Again, Big John put the brakes on that too. Back then, I would have went to any of the Lucchese crews, excluding the Bronx crews, rather than being a crew led by Big John. He had no business being in that position, and no one respected him. Has Danny Campo ever been incarcerated? If so, do you know what it was in relation to? I believe he told me one time that he was in a federal camp, and did 18 months. And I don't know what the charge was. I think it was business related, a white-collar crime. The following are questions sent from me outside of YouTube. I remember you talking about a rule that an inducted member can't get involved in stocks and bonds. Can you explain why, and did you hear of any members caught breaking this rule? I can't recall if this was told to me at my ceremony or not. Possibly, an old-timer told me, and it was an old rule. The only reason I could imagine that it would be banned is that maybe it brought unnecessary heat. And as I mentioned, I don't believe it was a rule during my time, so I wouldn't know anyone who violated it, because there were a lot of guys who were involved in stocks. So I don't believe it's a current rule. It could have been an older one, as I mentioned. When a member cooperates and enters the witness protection program, Why do a lot of guys keep their first names? Okay, first let me set the record straight about something, because I think either people assume or believe the false narrative that I was once in the witness protection program. I was never in that program. In fact, I refused it. Anyway, I was told the reason it's recommended to keep your first name during a name change is you're so used to it. Most people are not called by their last names, but a person can change their entire name if they wish. What is the most difficult part of putting a video together? Well, the first thing would definitely be the research. Unless I have personal knowledge of a subject, research can be tricky because there's a great deal of inaccurate or false information on the internet. Aside from that, I would have to say photos can also be difficult. If you're speaking of someone, having a photo displayed is more interesting to a viewer. There were numerous videos I put on the back burner for lack of having photos. You also need to keep in mind that certain photos can cause YouTube to flag and demonetize a video, which is always a headache. And lastly, it's not easy making a video flow. You don't want to be all over the place in what you're saying. I could sit in front of a camera and ramble on for an hour too, but that's not my thing. There's no art form to doing that. But piecing something together with the storyline, photos, and having it flow is an art in itself. Let me know if you agree or not. And here's another Vito Guzzo question that I received. You once mentioned that Joe Di Napoli didn't seem too pleased with how Vito Guzzo became inducted. Do you think he formed a negative opinion of him, or was he just set in tradition? Vito's induction came up by my mentioning to Joe Di Napoli what transpired, that the Colombo straightened Vito out in a prison bathroom. And Joe felt that having a ceremony in the bathroom was an insult to Cosa Nostra. He was adamantly against it, to the point of saying that the Luccheses didn't have to recognize Vito as a member. So I think it was more Joe being an old-timer and feeling that a situation like that should have been done correctly. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time to do so, as it helps me with YouTube's algorithm. And if anyone would like to show their appreciation for videos like this, you can do that by donating with the Super Thanks icon down below or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. And for the final question, one I believe I've had before. Have you ever considered writing a book about your life? Is it something you plan on doing in the future? One of the decisions I made early on, as far as publicly speaking, was that I would hold off as far as a book goes, and I turned down many of opportunities. Presently, I'm working on 2 books. One is about myself, and the other is a fictional book that I believe some people may find interesting. I've decided to concentrate more on the writings of my life first, as I want to complete it, and then I'll work on finishing the fictional book, so the proper response would be all in due time.